writing that out. Yeah. Oh yeah, welcome to... Yeah, we're still live? Yeah, cool, right. Welcome to the live. So I'm going to do a bit of a different one today. And this is about, it's not for everyone, this one, it's quite technical, but I'm going to talk about, this is related to what I'm doing at the current moment. So it's business processes, refining business processes. And I'm reading this book, of course, Traction by Gino Wickman, which is about the entrepreneurial operating system, right? So it's, this is related to the mental models video that I did, but it's specifically for business, this book. This entrepreneurial operating system is a very simplified model for running any business. And if I think about my own approach to this, it's almost like systemizing a business with a set of metrics. There's like 6 parts to it. It's very simple. And if you've ever started a business and you just set off, and which is what happens, you know, it's just done organically. You just, you know, people just do things their way. But as the business develops and starts to get bigger and, you know, acquires more clients and things, you have to start thinking about standardizing how you do business. And this book calls it like, you should create your way. Like, you know, you'll say, like, if your business was Benny's Bakers, say, like bakery, Benny's Bakers, it'd be the Benny's Bakers way, you know, of how we do business. And what it recommends is, I'm just reading this section on systemizing. And you've got things like this. You ever seen these kind of process maps? We've got something similar in my tech business. I have a, we follow ISO 9001 quality management systems, which is an international standard, and you have to get accredited and things. So you need all these processes, and you have to document how you do things, and you end up with like things like flows like this, like business flows, how things work. Whether what you're doing there is you're tracking the standard process of how you do business. So that might be like acquiring a customer, closing the deal, whatever you know, your sales process. Then it passes on to, say, operations who are going to deliver the service or the products or whatever. And then afterwards, you've got like aftercare and trying to retain the customer for like new purchases and things like, or, you know, customer lifetime value, all that kind of thing. And no matter what business you do, there's always a standard process that you could apply. So, and I think you could go further than that. So the reason why I did the video on mental models, I see those mental models, I might have put a link down below. It's called the 7 mental models for success. Those mental models are not just for business. They are, or you could see them as little processes that you could apply to various scenarios in life. So a bunch of them were about communication. And I gave examples of how that works in business, say, whether that's dealing with customers, sales, things like this, but also in your personal life, right? Whether it's friends, family, dating, things like this. You have to tweak them, of course, these mental models to suit the audience, because depending on who you're communicating with, you're always playing a role, right? The person that you are in business is very different. It's a very different role. You know, all this, like, you just be yourself. It's not strictly true. Yes, we want to be ourselves, but we're not being ourselves exactly the same with every single person. We play a role. So in business, we play a role when we're selling a product or service. We play a different role with our family. If you've got children, you know, you've got a different role there. You know, you're a parent. With a romantic interest, you've got a totally different role there, right? So those mental models that I did in that video, the 7 mental models for success, they're like little processes that you need to sort of embed in your brain. This is how I operate, right? And what I'm going to talk today, obviously things like business processes, things like this, is what I'm going through at the minute. So we've gone through the ISO 9001. obviously we've done it for a while now, so we've got processes. And I've been reading through here about having, like, when you create these processes. When we first started doing the processes for the business, I was really against it. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, to me, I just like taking risks and doing things, and I've always had my way of doing it. But one of the big things about this entrepreneurial operating system, which Gino Whitman talks about, is when you first start a business, you're all over it, right? You're in every single part of it, and you've kind of, he calls it letting go of the vine, right? To when you bring in more people, this is where you have to delegate responsibilities and let go of certain things. So stop trying to like micromanage everyone and things like this. And this was really hard for me because, I built that business, so it was my baby, and I was like, I didn't want to let go of any of it, you know what I mean? I wanted to make sure I was dipping in and saying, oh, that should be like this. And you've got to let go. And it's now got to the point where like sales are made without my involvement, or they have been made without my involvement, which is like a massive milestone. I'm like, and projects get delivered sometimes, or they have been in the past, without my involvement. I mean, I might oversee, but I'm not directly involved in the day-to-day, and that's fantastic. And at the start of this book, Gino Whitman calls it, hang on a minute, so he calls it a responsibilities matrix, but it's essentially an org chart, right? I'll just try and find it. Apologies for this if it's not your cup of tea, but it is something that you should listen to. Here we go, right? And they have this thing called, I might have shown this before, they have this thing called the 2 CEO model, where there's kind of two people. There's, at the very top, you've got the visionary, and that tends to be the founder, right? And the visionary is the person that looks after the vision, decides the direction of the business, that kind of thing, but doesn't get involved in the day-to-day operations. Underneath, you've got the 2 CEO model, you've got this other person called the integrator, who's generally more like a managing director, right? And they're the person that integrates the various functions of the business. So I'm just providing some background here, right? And if you think about these functions, each one of these functions, when you first start your business, you're just like doing it all yourself. But as it grows, each one of these functions needs a process. So that's the reason why you want a process is you want our way of doing things in your business, right? And that process, the idea, you could document a process for each function in each major function. You don't want too many in your business. So here now, you've got the visionary, which is obviously the 2 CEO model. You've got the visionary role, who looks after the vision and the ideas and the direction and big relationships. You've got the integrator role, which integrates these various functions, and they're more like a managing director. And then underneath, you've got like sales and marketing, you've got operations, you've got finance, right? Each one of so if you think operations will have a way of doing business, this is how we deliver our products and services. And documenting that is a really good thing to do, right? Because it tells everyone in the business how you do business. This is our way. And what it does is it stops people going out, it's like, I've always done it this way. I've always done, people bring bad habits from previous jobs. And you want to stamp that out. Now, I was massively against this when we first went down this route. And I would say that we were forced down it because clients want us to be accredited, right? So I reluctantly went down it. But once I saw, here's the important point. Once I saw the results of this, so at first I just saw it as red tape. I thought it'll hold us back. We're agile, we're a tech business, we want to remain agile. But once I saw this getting implemented, everyone's working on it, and then I then took it on myself as a real advocate, because what I saw was automating the business automation. And I thought, if I can automate every function, just even a little bit, just not too micromanaging, but just high level automation, of each business function, I can predict and measure everything that goes through that business. And then me, as the founder, I don't have to micromanage every little bit of it. I can just stand back, and you just have what's called a business scorecard, which is literally just a set of high-level metrics that you can look at, and all you need to do, as long as you've automated the processes of your major business functions, you can then just measure it using the business scorecard. So that might be how many leads we got this week, how many got booked onto calls, how many proposals went out, how many sales, how many jobs went through operations, how much money's coming in. These key metrics, right? How many people saw our advert, how many impressions, how many clicks, cost per click, whatever, how much is the advertising spend. These are all things on your business scorecard that you can measure. And now, so I've just created a new business, and I've started doing this straight away. This, on my tech business, I never did any of this. I avoided it for years. I thought it was red tape. I just thought it'd just get in the way of our agility. But in seeing the value of automating your business, I've now done it straight away on my new business, which is just me and my cousins, only two of us involved. And you think, well, why do we need? Well, because having that scorecard, what gets measured gets managed. It's really true. And you don't have to go crazy with it. So the one thing I've been reading about today is what it mentions is, hang on, I think it's on page 150, hang on, over here somewhere, 153. It's talking about the 80-20 rule, right? 153, let's have a little look, right? So it says, when documenting the processes, you should follow the 20-80 rule. That means the 20% that produces the 80% of the results. In other words, document at a very high level. You should not be creating a 500-page document. And the other thing is, a lot of things can get replaced with simple checklists. Now, yeah, GitLab, you talk about GitLab. We use GitLab for our software. Brilliant, right? Now, yeah, you got all the CI/CD, all the automation there, it's fantastic. I don't know if that's what you meant, you said GitLab. I don't know if you meant GitLab, but yeah, we use that for our software, source code tracking and build agents and everything. Anyway, you got me off track now. Yeah, that 80-20 rule. So when I first wrote the processes for our business, the first thing I did was, because I'm a nerd, I just created these absolutely fantastic business workflows and things like this. And they've ended up too complicated. So I'm now going for a process of simplifying them so that they're less tight, right? And in my software, but our software is essentially, it's like a workflow automation tool. It's like a robotic process automation. So it will automate business processes. Yes, we're in engineering and all that kind of thing. And it's for like maintenance, property maintenance and things like this. But once you configure it, it will literally automate any process you want, right? So it's great at because it's automated and real-time dashboards and things like this. It's fantastic. Now, one of the processes that I've done is actually how we deliver a project for one of our clients. I might be able to just swing this round just on my laptop, just showing it. I don't know if you can see that. You see this kind of flow chart, you won't be able to read it, but there's loads of steps. This is continuous improvement. This is sales and inputs at the top. And then the greens are ends. And then there's all these steps and decisions. Now, this is literally how we run a project, but I'm going to look to simplify this down, right? Because what I realized is, whilst we've done this, I need to make it more 2080, as it says in there. So that's what I'm going to do next. So I just thought I'd sort of point that out. Like I say, even in doing this that complicated, I'm now able to automate the business, and it's so easy. And I'm now moving to, we do have like a monthly business scorecard, but it's more tracking sales and finances and things like this. It's like a business management overview. but I want to track some other things, like the marketing, the sales cycles, who's, inquiries, and also project delivery. So I'm going to be adding to it, right? But the point of this live, obviously, if you're in a business, you should start proceduralizing all your major functions of your business, even if you're quite small, just even if they're simple checklists, because then you'll be able to. And the idea is, like on that side there, this is our continuous improvement process on the purple, on that side. I don't know which way it's showing. It might be mirrored for you. The idea is do something like I've done. I mean, this is a big document that's explained. Do something and then improve it. So next week we're going to improve it. I'm going to look at, well, maybe that's a bit over constraining. We'll take that out and we'll just simplify it in a few simple steps. Continuous improvement is important, so you have to measure it. What I want to point out is these procedures are like mental models. And I think you could also apply this to pretty much everything in your life. I'm not saying you have to document it, but a good example, like let's try some other areas. The video that I did on the 7 mental models for success, they're applicable not just in business, but in your personal life. And I think this is where you could apply this. So like you could have a standard process for your health and fitness, right? So examples, a standard methodology for diet. So if you go on my website, andyholt.co.uk, go to resources, and I've got diet plans and recipes there. A write-up, big long article, and I've got some recipes. And you could literally take that as a blueprint or your own version of it. I've done loads of videos on it. And I just repeat that. That is my mental model, stroke process for diet, right? And it gives me great success. And every now and again, I'll tweak it when I read something new in a book or whatever, or I start seeing results. And the other ways you tweak your diet is like as you're going on a cut or on a bulk, you just adjust it slightly, right? There's an example of, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be a business process, but I've got a documented process for my diet. It's on my website. I'm also creating like a digital ebook version of it that we're going to include with the journal. It's quite exclusive. It's one of the free downloads that you get when you buy the journal for goal achievement, which is this thing here. Little plug. Yay. Anyway, but that is a mental model, a blueprint, right? And it's like a process. Now, another process that you could build, because obviously we've been talking a lot about business processes that you should do. Another one is a training plan, developing a training split, understanding fundamentals. So like for argument's sake, give you an example. I tend to follow I've been through all the different splits, and I tend to follow a lower upper split, lower upper, right? So, and you can do that. In my split, I can train all major body parts twice a week in 4 sessions that are no longer than 1 hour, right? That's pretty efficient, right? So in your first lower, I will do a lower, which is like obviously legs, lower, that is quad focus. So it'll start with your key lift will be squats, right? Or some kind of split squat like Bulgarians or back squat or whatever, right? You've got a squat, right? Because it's quad focused. And then your second lift will be a hinge, like some kind of deadlift, right? And then your next day, you've got an upper. So you might start your next day with a push, right? Like some kind of like incline press, whatever you want to do, bench press, dumbbell press, right? And then you'll do some pull, some back, right? But what I do is I only do half of my back training and half of my push training in that day, because I'm going to sandwich it, right? So do it on the next upper, but in reverse. So you've got your first, like I say, your first day on your lower is a quad focus. So that's like a squat followed by a hinge. then you've got your first day of your upper, which is a push focus followed by a pull. And then you have a day off, or you could do some little bits and pieces. And then the next day, your next lower is a hinge focus first, followed by some kind of like quads squat type thing. And then on your second upper, you'll do a pull focus. You might do chins or something, and then some push, some press, right? So you get all major body parts twice a week, right? I'm labouring that point, but what I'm saying is I've got a model there, which is a mental model and a process, and it works to deliver results. And that also works with the diet plan, right? So I've got the diet plan as a process. I've got a training split as a process. It just works and it's very efficient, right? It's exactly the same as me creating a business process for my tech business, which is, this is how we do business. This is how we've got a process for, this is how we get a sale. We've got a process for, this is how we deliver a project. This is how we invoice, all that kind of thing. And it becomes very predictable. And what you can put that on a business scorecard and just track all your metrics every week. And remember what I said about, like what it says in here, in this book, Traction. You should document at a high level. So you're going for the 20-80, the 20% of results, so 20% of things that get the 80% of results. So you're simplifying your processes into what works. And remember, continuous improvement. You're constantly improving it, right? And it doesn't matter whether that's for business, for your fitness. And you could say that this kind of ties into, the goals that are set in here. As I say, the life harmony model in here, which is all areas of life, you can apply the same goal achievement system to all areas of life. And this is what I like about mental models and systems and processes. They're applicable to everything, right? Do you need to go and document the hell out of your whole? No, just build some mental models in your head of how you're going to operate, and that's all you need to do. Next week I'm going to be obviously going through some of our processes, streamlining them more in line with the entrepreneurial operating system by Gino Wickman. So yeah, we use ISO 9001 for my main business, which is a bit more red tape, a bit more bureaucratic, but you can make it as small as you want. So I'm going to start reducing it down to stuff in here. But I also have my mental models for life. I have one for like various for communication, I have various for my health and fitness, I have various for business. And they're really good. Processes, mental models, same thing. You could just say, all right, a process tends to be documented. A mental model is just something that, like a belief that you hold, and it's like a reusable skill. They're both doing the same thing. They're making it easy for you to navigate through life. All right. I went around the houses there, but I hope that were useful. Right. Thank you for listening. And any questions, stick them down below. See you all next time.